Okay.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Run It Back podcast. I am your host, Joy, and alongside with me is always Wes. How are you doing today, Wes?
Hi, Joy. Hi, Run It Back Nation. I'm ready to talk another round of F1 in the off season. We got a lot of news this week, and I can't wait to start covering it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, you pretty much hit it right on the head, Wes. We have a lot of news this week for Formula One, and pretty much half of the news that we got this week was already made by Wednesday night. And so, yeah, so let's get into the hot laps. So for 2022, the engine development freeze is approved. So pretty much no team from 2022, from the beginning of 2022 to 2025, the new engine regulations, teams are not allowed to pretty much develop the engines, right? And so pretty much it's just going to be the chassis that they could work on, although that's still also very limited. But yeah, so pretty much from here until 2022, Wes, I predict that there's going to be this arms race again for development, but this time it's going to be more centered around the engine, right? I think a lot of developers, a lot of manufacturers are going to try to get as much time as they can to get all the performance that they can extract from their engines.
For sure. I mean, when it comes to the technical aspects of it, yeah, it's going to be an arms race. I agree with you there. But I think the bigger story here is that in many areas, Honda gets to stay.
Yeah, yeah,
And that would appease a lot of Red Bull fans out there.
absolutely, absolutely. And so yeah, although it is not going to be badge Honda, they will pretty much. It's still going to be the same engines. There are some key figures within the Honda development team that are going to stay and help Red Bull engine help Red Bull kind of develop the engine. Although it's not going to be development as in like more power, it's probably going to be development as in like trying to fit it into the chassis, making sure like everything, the wear and tear of the engine isn't too bad. But yeah, you pretty much also said it, Wes. This is coming off of Red Bull's need, right, to pretty much have this engine freeze, right, because Honda is leaving, and they're not gonna have, like, it was thought to be like they're not gonna have any engines for 2022, and they were running out of time. And so yeah, so now Honda is allowing them to buy pretty much the engines from 2022 to 2025. And so I think this is a huge win for Red Bull. But Wes, let me ask you: at the beginning of this freeze, who do you think will win out of this? Just the arms race. Like, who would you think would have the most powerful engine come 2022?
Mercedes.
Okay, okay, yeah,
And that's because, again, they were already the number one overall engine before the freeze.
right,
And because they are number one in everything, everything is theirs to lose.
absolutely, yeah, I
And
completely agree.
they already spent too much time uh, working towards the future anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't see it where they would be a non-favorite to win out in the engine freeze.
Absolutely, absolutely. I remember actually in 2018 when Mercedes pretty much stated that there was nothing else left to gain from the V6 turbo hybrid engines, and then Ferrari, of course, they were caught cheating. But it seemed as though for a while Ferrari found a way to make more powerful engines, and so Mercedes actually worked pretty much overtime throughout the off season of 2018 to find more ways to make their engines powerful. And now, as a result of Ferrari cheating, now Mercedes is just on another whole level. But I will say, I do think that the engines will be a lot closer in performance come 2022. Like I said, like, I do kind of agree that these engines are reaching their maximum potential. And I'm pretty sure the manufacturers, Honda, Renault, and Ferrari, everyone keeping up will catch up.
For sure. I mean, it would close the gap, right? But how much?
Right.
Kind of like you said earlier. Um, but of course, just the way things stand, I can't see an overtake at the
Hmm.
top.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, pretty much everyone's just fighting to whoever gets closer to Mercedes. And so yeah,
I
uh,
mean, hasn't it always been like that though?
it
Since the
has
V6 hybrid era?
it has yes, but like I said, right in the 2018 season, it seems as though Ferrari had the most powerful engine, and so like that prompted pretty much Mercedes to kind of you know see where they can improve anywhere else. So
Well,
yeah,
for sure, right? And now that you bring that up, it kind of makes me think about, I guess, the philosophy of racing.
right,
That, in racing in general, it's not always about the horsepower or the engine. It usually comes down to the driver,
right,
right? Because there are instances where a lesser car can beat the car that is quote unquote meant to be perfect. But it seems like because F1 is such a different kind of animal, it's like, okay, maybe it is about the engine power in this case, but we'll see.
yeah, right, absolutely, absolutely. We'll see. 2022 is not that far away, so we'll definitely see it soon. And so the second biggest news coming out of this week is that Formula One is considering experimenting with sprint races for this upcoming season. And so pretty much they already named out three of the, the Grand Prix that they wanted to test this in. It's going to be the Canadian Grand Prix, the Italian, and the Brazilian Grand Prix. No exact reason why they chose these circuits to try and test it out. But yeah, I'm not sure, Wes. What do you think about sprint races being considered in Formula One?
Well, it sounds like F1 is trying to take a lot of ideas from F2.
Hmm.
Um, from what I understand, this also helps with grid placement, no?
Yeah,
The
it's
sprint
going to be a little bit
races.
more chaotic towards the feature race.
Right. And I don't know. I think it would shake up the midfield,
Hmm.
right? But going if you do qualifying on a Friday, who has dominated Fridays the past this past season? Mercedes.
Right.
Bottas then Lewis on a Friday.
Right.
So say that stays the same, then generally in a race, even if you just cut the race in half, there's a good chance that the two Mercedes will still be at the front
Right.
or within the podium places. So I feel like the sprint races would help shake out, the 5 through 20
Right.
slots, but maybe not one through three.
Right. Okay.
But it
So
would be an interesting thing to watch because, um, I've always wanted to see a shortened F1 race,
right.
and not because of the video games and all that, but really I wanted to see because sometimes it can get boring, right?
Hmm.
So it's kind of like, let's say it's a track where Mercedes dominates, and I know I'm saying Mercedes too much. Then us, the casual fans, can be put out of our misery if Mercedes goes out and wins that sprint race, right? Because it'll be done sooner.
Right. Exactly. And
But then again, you would kind of want to see how Renault and Aston Martin and McLaren, all those other teams, Ferrari, how they battle it out in such a short period of time.
right. Absolutely. And so the sprint races, they propose that it should be 1/3 of the race length, the feature race length.
Okay.
And so what's interesting is that the race actually tallied race results if they were in the sprint races
Mm-hmm.
by like the points, right? And it turns out that like Valtteri Bottas would have been a lot closer to Lewis Hamilton for the championship. But the way that they wanted to structure uh, pretty much the race weekend is going to be qualifying in Friday, which we know Mercedes dominates. That would determine the qualifying grid of the sprint races. And in the sprint race, only the top 8 teams or the top 8 drivers pretty much earn points. And from the top 8, then it's pretty, I believe, like it reverses. So you would have Lewis at P8 at the feature race. So it does kind of throw a little bit of a spanner in the works, but yeah, again, like they need over like 30 approvals. So the way that they're gonna go through this experimental phase is that they're at on the day of or on the week of the Grand Prix, they're actually gonna have the teams, the FIA and the Formula One, um, pretty much vote vote for whether they want to continue with these sprint races on the week of. And there's a growing suspicion that it's like all the teams are not gonna vote for it, because the biggest concern is what happens if you crash in the sprint races, and we don't have enough chassis to compete for the feature race, right? Because there's a lot of teams like Haas who struggle with pretty much bringing an extra chassis to Grand Prix.
Yeah, no. Despite the sentiments I said earlier, I would think that they're going to vote no as well.
Right.
And not to go back again to the well, but with the data that you spread out, Joy, I didn't really think about that. I didn't really think about the Sunday portion of it, but I don't think Mercedes would want to start P7, P8.
No, I don't think so.
Just saying.
No.
So it's kind of in Red Bull P5, P6,
Yeah, I don't think so.
right? I don't think they'd want that.
Right.
So even though chances are they might make up the positions, right?
Right.
But it wouldn't be worth it. And right, like what if they crash? What if something else happens?
Right.
And at the same time, you kind of want to make Formula One,
Right.
and Formula Two.
Right.
So I think from a fan's perspective, it would look good. But if you were in the shoes of a team leader, I would say no.
Right. Especially when there's this cost cap budget that they're trying to enforce.
Exactly.
It doesn't really make any sense, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean that's one thing to look forward to. So Canada, Italian, and the Brazilian Grand Prix, right? So we'll see. We'll see in the future if they do approve of it. It's still in the air. It's still hanging. So yeah, I'm excited to see where it'll go. But let's go on to the third biggest news of this week. Portimao returns to the Formula One grid. Now, Portimao made its return to Formula One this past season, where pretty much there was a lot of action. At one point, at the beginning of the race, we thought it was raining. It was raining a little bit, and Carlos Sainz pretty much took the lead, by not by merit, but by pure pace, right? And that was exciting. That was interesting. But I mean, there was also some pretty good racing in the midfield, right? So I'm excited. And Portimao looks like a really good track. It looks like the drivers really enjoy it. I hope that they add it into the Formula One game that's coming up. But yeah, what's your reactions, Wes, for the Portimao return?
Before I get into that, I thought Portimao was the first time ever.
No, that was the second Italian Grand Prix. It wasn't the entire Romagna, but it was uh the name
No, it
escapes.
wasn't. Second race was you're talking about Mugello?
Yeah, Mugello never hosted a Formula One race, but Portimao has.
What year?
Yeah, because Portimao was built as a Formula One track.
Yeah, but that
believe.
doesn't mean that it can be it's gonna host a Grand Prix right from the get go.
Ooh. I mean, I will double check. But go ahead, Wes.
Anyhow, it's cool. I actually enjoyed watching that race when it occurred,
Right.
and yeah, no, it was kind of weird to see the front row struggling with tire grip because track conditions weren't all that great, and somehow Carlos Sainz snuck up to P1, um, which was quite the spectacle to see, especially if you're a McLaren fan a struggling McLaren fan, he had that light of joy for a couple laps,
Yeah.
and eventually, yeah, Mercedes took over, and I believe it was Lewis that won that race,
Right.
right? Because Bottas made a mistake somewhere.
Yes.
Uh, but yeah, no, I'm excited. And the thing is, when they go back, the drivers on the grid, most of them, with the exception of Fernando Alonso, uh, would have the idea of how to get around.
Right.
So I'm excited to see how they actually run it back in Portimao.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I just pretty much checked it, Wes. You are correct that this is the first time that the Portimao circuit has hosted a Formula One Grand Prix, but it wasn't the first Portuguese Grand Prix. It was the first one since 1996. But yes, the Portuguese Grand Prix was pretty much used by pretty much other racing disciplines instead of Formula One, where it was pretty much built for. But yeah,
Did MotoGP go there?
I'm not quite sure exactly.
Okay,
So, but
well,
it's pretty much
uh,
a, yeah.
this fact check brought to you by yours truly, Wes Ibarra.
All right. Well, yeah. Well done, Wes. And so yeah. Pretty much the next news that we have, pretty big news, because it brought a lot of discussion on who should, if there was going to be a replacement for this guy. But you just mentioned him, Wes, Fernando Alonso. He suffered a cycling incident, um, and he got pretty banged up, right? Uh, Fractured upper jaw, which is not good at all. It sounds painful, but yeah, I mean, the preseason is about to come up. There's a lot of, you know, car reveals that are gonna happen in the next month. What do you think about Wes? Do you think, I don't know, could he possibly miss races due to this injury?
Before I get into that, I do want to plug something, Joey. I want to plug the No Decision podcast, which is the other podcast on our network. And in ode to the No Decision podcast, we have a ding dong alert. So if anybody from the No Decision podcast listening to Run It Back, yes, we got a ding dong alert.
Yeah.
No, nobody got punched, but somebody got hit using a bicycle, and that
Hmm.
is Fernando Alonso. Um, I will say it hasn't come at a good time,
Right.
to the point where he had to have emergency surgery.
Right.
But I don't think he's gonna miss anything.
Okay.
He might have to do like limited minutes in the cockpit, right?
Right.
But I can't see him missing races.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
especially with the medical attention that athletes receive. It's almost second to none.
Right.
So, and I'm sure Renault or Alpine has him really covered, as he's probably their biggest asset right now. So, of course, I can't see him missing any races, because then it would just not be worth anyone's investment in that at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And
And he's
Fernando's.
strong.
Yeah.
Fernando's stronger than he looks.
I was about to
So
say, like,
he'll make it.
he's pretty tough, and so obviously this is his return to Formula One. I don't think he wants anyone else in that seat but him. And so yeah, I mean, also, I mean, it seems as though the reports say that his injuries only are from his jaw, but he also has some minor nicks here and there, but not enough to where he can't drive the car, right? And he has pretty much a month to try and recover. But I'm pretty sure they would have wanted him in the office, probably like from this month and the next month, just to make sure that everything's going smoothly. We talked about the seat fitting for Daniel Ricciardo. I'm pretty sure Fernando is already seat fitted, but still, right? Like you want to integrate him in your team as much as you can.
For sure. Yeah, it does throw a wrench into Alpine's plans, but like I said, something about athlete treatment. It's fast, it's effective, and
They
you
can
know, I
provide miracles.
exactly. I could assure you that by the time Fernando comes out to do testing or whatever the scenario may be, he'll look like nothing happened.
Absolutely, Absolutely.
He'll probably address the media as what accident.
Right. I know some guys walking around with 9 bullets and 50 cent, and so we'll see. But
Sure.
I mean, he's got one in his jaw too. So I mean, we'll see. We'll see.
Hey, I mean that much inflictions, and you're already a multi-millionaire. I'll
Mm,
take it.
I'll take it. All right. Decent. All right, guys. So let's go to the final news of the week. This actually came. It was quite early in the week, right, Wes? It was like Monday, and so, but the reason why we put this so low is because I mean we've talked about this, Wes. We think it's still going to happen. We had no doubts that Mercedes were going to let go of Lewis Hamilton, especially in this such crucial time when they could pretty much set records. They could even you know set the standard higher for the rest of the grid. And
Sure.
Lewis, who I mean Lewis breaking Michael Schumacher's record. I don't think Mercedes would want Lewis to break it in any other car other than the Mercedes.
But yeah, other than theirs, right?
Right.
Because uh, they're the new dynasty,
Right.
right? And yeah, I had no doubts in my mind that Lewis Hamilton was going to come back. Um, I did have a gut feeling, especially just by looking at age and commitments, it
Hmm.
wasn't going to be a long term deal.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not surprised, to be honest with you, that it was only going to be for one season. My projection was going to be two,
Right.
or a 1+1, meaning he'll take 1 year for sure
Hmm.
and have an option.
An
And if he
option.
declines, then that contract is void. And if he accepts, then he's
Right.
signed on for another year without any extra paperwork. But
Yeah.
um, it's from what we're hearing, it's 1 year solid, and I think that can answer, or not answer, but cause a lot of presumptions.
Right.
I have a presumption for sure on why that contract is for a year,
Mm-hmm.
and that presumption is that chances are, if he wins this season, that's it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Jordan, my brother, actually predicts as well that this will be his final season, win or loss. Now, I mean, if he loses the championship, it's going to be a little bit more interesting what he does next. But I think yes, if he wins this one, I think it will be also the end. I am also agreeing with you, Wes, that I thought this was going to be at least a 2 year contract, where he gets to kind of test out the waters for the new regulation, right? Because what if Mercedes is still quite dominant at the beginning of the 2022 regulations? There's could be more championships for him. But yeah, I mean, we also bring this up because there's a pretty much a guy waiting in the wings, right? For to take the Mercedes seat. But I want to reassure all of our listeners, but that Lewis Hamilton's contract is not the only one that only has 1 year, right? Valtteri Bottas only has
Valtteri
1 year,
Bottas. Yeah,
and it seems as though his contract is a little bit less uncertain, even though he has pretty much a very similar contract to Lewis. It seems as though you know Bottas doesn't seem like he's going to be around much longer in that Mercedes seat.
sure. And I also want to add that it's going to be a really deep free agency class next year, because, or after at the end of this season, because Checo Perez's contract would be up too with Red Bull. Uh, and of course, if you listen to the rumor mill, you can also link someone like George Russell to a Red Bull and
Hmm.
all those crazy ass trades and whatnot.
Right.
But I could also feel that with the engine freeze that we mentioned in an earlier lap, Joy, that chances are he could do the LeBron James or Kevin Durant, and by he I mean Lewis Hamilton. So let me explain this to you all. Uh, LeBron James and Kevin Durant they're like the kings of the 1+1 contract,
Right.
literally, meaning they'll sign the maximum amount of money they can make for a year, and then like they'll commit to the team for that year, and then if they still like what they're seeing, they'll stay around,
Right.
and then it'll just be 1 year contracts until they decide, I'm sick of this shit, I'm out of here. So I could see Lewis doing that. now that the freeze is pretty much in stone.
Right.
Like I could see him, like if he claims an eighth or not, I could see him trying to do it again and
Right.
do whatever it is he
Right.
wants to do.
Exactly.
Or yeah, but for me, if he gets that eighth, I would say that's it.
Yeah.
Because what else is there to gain? But that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And yeah, I quite agree with your claim there, Wes. I don't think Lewis ever wants to see himself or give anyone else that opportunity to beat him. And so if he retires when he's at the top, that's pretty much his Rosberg moment, right? So, um, but yeah, that's pretty much it for Lewis. And
Sure.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, let's go on through this discussion, Wes, about the 2025 engine regulations, right?
Sure.
So the current engines, they're pretty much a really hot take, right? It's pretty much a debate whether they actually improved Formula One or they kind of regressed Formula One's popularity because there's only one team that pretty much dominated it whole, I mean, which is not their fault completely, but because the engines are so powerful, or they're such an integral part of Formula One, which Mercedes proved. Wes, what do you think the new Formula One engine should be in 2025?
I took some time to think about it between now and our pre-production meeting on Friday night, Joy,
Hmm.
and it's going to be a slight revision to what I said to you behind the scenes.
Okay.
Um, Four-cylinder hybrid, naturally aspirated.
Ooh. Okay. So no more turbos.
You don't need them.
Okay.
To be honest with you, especially if you're going to have the electric motors in there, you don't need them.
Right.
If you
Right.
think about hybrid cars on the street, like the Lexus CT200 or the
Hmm.
Toyota Prius or um, whatever else, I think it's the Clarity
Right.
Honda.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like those are naturally aspirated, no? They
Right.
don't have turbochargers and
Right.
they already have the kick because of the battery in the car.
Right.
Right. Well, maybe not the Prius. So if there's any Prius owners here, I'm sorry. The Prius doesn't suit my driving style. But yeah, I mean, they said lower cost engines. Well, four cylinders are generally
Lower
lower cost
costs.
than
Right.
uh, six. Uh, they seem to be very adamant on that clean energy stuff. Well, you can still stay with the hybrids. I mean,
Absolutely. And
not everybody hates them.
right.
So, you know, and like I said with the turbos, you don't need them,
Right.
okay? Especially when you're not, especially when you're not blipping blipping through the corner to keep
The engine.
the
The
energy going to
right.
delay to prevent lag delay.
Right. Right.
And I understand that whistle is very oddly satisfying, but trust me, uh, they don't need it,
Right.
especially with the power that they already
Well,
bring out.
right, Wes. So, like, just one more question. Based on your prediction, do you think that it's gonna be the electric power or the electric motor or the ICE that's gonna have more power within that drivetrain?
You know, I haven't really thought about that.
Right.
Uh, I wouldn't mind if it's either or.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, um, I quite agree with you, Wes. I do think that they're probably heading towards even less cylinders, four cylinders, or even maybe five cylinders, inline fives. They're probably going to be, in Formula One's agenda. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they keep the V6 engines. I do think that Formula One will, sadly, I think they're gonna keep the engines, the V6 engines, the V6 pretty much structure. Um, I'm pretty sure they're still gonna keep the turbos, the bi-turbo, um, only because I mean these, they're gonna ask for these turbos, right? I do think that there's gonna be a lot more power for the electric unit. I think the biggest change in these new engine regulations is the fuel that we put in them, right? I think they're going to be pretty much sustainable, right? They're going to be completely sustainable, zero carbons, and I think that that is quite possible, right? We spoke about this, Wes, that um, you don't necessarily have to have a fully electric car to create zero emissions. You know, you could pretty much create a fuel that's pretty sustainable, that doesn't have any carbon, but of course they're going to be a lot more rare. They're going to be a lot more expensive, but
Right. So
yeah,
that's why I say low cost,
exactly,
or that was the rebuttal that I'm gonna have with the low cost, right?
exactly,
Because if you're gonna spend all that time looking for that fuel, you might as well stick to what's already
there, right,
somewhat working,
right,
right?
exactly,
And that's the standard of cars when it comes to clean air,
right,
hybrid.
exactly,
I mean,
exactly, and
I'm not gonna mention this guy's cars, but EM's cars. Yeah, that's totally different. That's a totally different kind of conversation, but
right,
still,
yeah, exactly, and I do quite think that hybrid is the future of Formula One. I think it's going to stay after some
it's the
thought.
future of cars in general.
Right. And so, like, I mean, also, like, Wes, like, Porsche pretty much solved this problem with their LMP1 car, right? They only had a four-cylinder engine, which still produced 1,500 brake horsepower. So, if Porsche can do it, I'm sure Mercedes can. I'm sure, uh, Red Bull powertrains is what they're calling it. Can. I'm pretty sure Renault can, and I'm pretty sure Ferrari can. Uh, and I would like to see a four-cylinder car, four-cylinder engine for F1 class. Whether it's two-stroke or four-stroke, two-stroke is going to make a lot more noise. It's just the technology. We never really put a lot of resource into it, but I mean, this is just I'm excited, right? I'm excited for the new stage in Formula One. I can't wait for next year to see the new cars. I can't wait for 2025 to hear the new engines, to see how fast they are, how sustainable they are. But yeah, thank you so much, Wes, for sharing your
My
2025.
pleasure.
And so yeah, that's pretty much all the show that we have. Thank you so much, guys, for listening, and drop back in on Sunday to listen to our next podcast. And also, if you want to listen to a little bit more, but in a totally different sport, right? Boxing. We also cover boxing in the No Decision podcast, and that's coming up next. Thank you, guys.
Keep it on track, everyone.